Welcome to Kingdomize, the podcast, where we discuss how to see our lives and our world through a kingdom lens, how to infuse kingdom culture into our families, our workplaces, and our cities, as we all participate in the dream of Jesus to see his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And you are listening to Kingdomize Global, the podcast. It's going to be so good. There's so much. You are going to know yourself so much better when we're done today. You will think, how did I even get by? How did I even do anything as a leader until today when I met Bruce Mann again and he helped me be self-aware? Bruce Mann, is that what's going to happen? That's what's going to happen today, right?
We'll do our best.
This is Kingdomize Global, the podcast, and I am here with Bruce Mann, and he is our leadership guru. I keep calling you that, and it's sticking. So, and I know it just makes you feel good inside, and you get that embarrassed Canadian look every time I do it.
Yeah. Wow.
There you go.
So, well, it's we need more often to be reminded than informed. So I think maybe some of this is a reminder, but the fact is we need it. So.
We're gonna talk about ourselves today.
Yeah.
Today is session 7. We're going to talk about self-awareness. It's what guys love to talk about, their feelings and emotions and how they think about themselves. Guys love that. But it's really important, right? It's really important.
As a leader, it's indispensable, because leaders impact people one way or the other. And if we're not aware of how we're interacting, the ways, the way that we function and the way that we speak and the way that we interact, how it's impacting people, we're going to get, all of a sudden there's going to be someone's going to say, do you realize that you're doing this every time?
Yeah.
And we want to avoid that if possible.
And chances are they're probably not aware, right? So tell us where we're going. We're talking about self-awareness. How are we going to get there today? Give us a basic overview and then we'll jump right in.
Okay. So here, let me give you a little, I remember hearing this statement one time, and I think it applies here, that for every mile of road, there's 2 miles of ditch. For every mile of road, there's 2 miles of ditch. But what that really is referencing is that to the left or to the right, if we sway, if we're unaware, if we're not fully kind of aware of what we're doing and how we're impacting people, we can fall into the ditch easily. And so really this is about keeping intentional leadership, but in leadership that's blessing people as it's achieving its goals, not just at the expense of people to achieve the goals.
Yeah. So
we're going to look today at 2 facets of this understanding ourselves or being self-aware. One is the idea of the defective virtues, meaning there are virtues that we all have, strengths, gifts, talents that we possess, but they can actually become our greatest hindrance if they're not managed well.
Right.
And so we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about leadership bias. And this is really just the default responses that we have, the ways that we function and interact with people that just come from the environment, the various influences of our life, but we default to them because they tend to be our strengths, or they tend to be the things that we feel most strongly about. But if we don't understand those 2 areas, we're going to have a limited impact simply because we're going to make decisions that are narrow rather than broad in understanding. So,
right. In our discussion, Bruce, we really talk a lot about the importance of leaders, of creating teams. And this is, as you said, this is paramount, right? So I think of a Maxwell quote, like leadership is influence, right? And if you're not self-aware, you are influencing, it just may not be good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
for sure. Or it may be just less than it could be.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as leaders, we should want to get better, right? We should want to lead better, lead more effectively, more efficiently, right?
Yeah.
And that comes with that. So
this session is an inward look at ourselves.
Yeah.
And then the next session, which is obviously coming down the road, is a bit the outward look. How do we lead? how do
Okay.
we care for, love, and nurture those who are part of our team, the people that we're leading? And so it's both inward and outward, but today it's inward, it's navel gazing.
Excellent.
So
Well, it's nasal gazing for a reason.
yeah.
So so that's really good. So let's jump right in, because this will be easy, right? Self-awareness is the easy one, right?
No,
No.
no. No, I put the line here that becoming self-aware is no small task. No small task. And so understanding our own personal strengths, our biases, the things that we're passionate about, but how we're actually, you know, leading with those strengths and passions it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah. Right. And it's interesting, right? Because as leaders, the more you grow in your leadership, you're kind of told to find those strengths and do 80% of your time. Like, you're doing well if
Yep.
80% of the time you're in your strengths. But
Yep.
that can also be a challenge if you're not aware in the middle of that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, totally. And we're you and I are a little ways down the road. You know, we we should grow in understanding ourselves.
Yeah.
Read a really good book a number of years ago by a fellow named Dale Burke. It's called Less is More Leadership.
Yeah.
And it really is similar to this idea that um, we need to understand ourselves so we know what to engage in, and more as importantly, what not to engage in, what not to try and do, because
Right.
we're all gifted. And so it's this issue of understanding ourselves, being self-aware, so that we actually see ourselves in real time and be so that we can actually lead effectively is it the beauty of it is this, that not only do we become more confident in our leadership, we become more nurturing and the ability to lead others and help them grow and develop in their leadership roles.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, that is leadership, right? That is raising
Yeah.
up others, and that has your succession plans and so forth. Really, really good. So while we're here, then let's make some definitions. Let's create some definitions, because under the banner of self-awareness, as you said already, you want to talk about leadership bias and the defective virtue. I think
Yep.
it'd be good to define those for us.
Okay. Well, let's start with leadership bias. So it is define that as a particular tendency, trend, or inclination, a feeling, or an opinion, especially one that's preconceived or unreasoned,
Okay.
right? Meaning it's reactionary and it's come from our collective influences of our life. So
Right.
we'll
Right.
dive a little deeper into that in a moment. The defect of virtue is misguided passion that hurts or harms or hinders others.
Okay.
Passions aren't wrong. The
Right.
things that we feel strongly about, and even are gifted strongly about
Right.
with, but if we're not managing them well, if we're allowing our passions to lead us instead of leading our passions, ultimately they're going to create tension. They're going to hurt others.
So just for clarification, Bruce, are you equating your passion with your giftedness? Are you equating that passion with the virtue? Just so I'm aware. So it's the
Yeah,
defect of virtue. So you're wired a certain way, but there's a bit of a defect. Like, just clarifying.
sure. So our virtues, maybe we could call them our giftings, the things that we're strongly inclined towards,
Yeah.
um, are who God has made us to be, the
Yeah.
things that He's built into us. But our biases are broader than that.
Yeah.
They're the outcomes of our life and the things that we've done,
Got it.
that have influenced us. And we can be passionate about something that we're not necessarily gifted in or
Got it.
gifted with the ability to do.
Got it.
And sometimes those passions um, are healthy, and sometimes they're not healthy.
Yeah.
I use the illustration of Jesus with John and James, right? In Luke 9:54, where he names John and James the sons of thunder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was what's interesting in that little episode there, they had just asked Jesus if they could call down fire from heaven to incinerate some people who they felt offended Jesus.
It's interesting how some people get nicknames, right?
Yeah.
So, guy in Acts, his name's Joseph, and he was so nice and kind, he became Barnabas, the son of encouragement.
Yeah, son of encouragement.
James and John are so passionate, it's like, the sons of thunder.
Yeah. And it's both a compliment and a reprimand.
Got it.
From Jesus, right? He's saying, guys, appreciate your passion, appreciate your desire to protect me from, people's rejection and offense, but you're a little misguided in wanting to destroy them with fire from heaven. And so it's not that the passion is necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
It's misguided.
So they want to protect Jesus. They want to stand beside him and show their friendship.
Yeah.
They just took that passion, that virtue, and just pushed it a little too hard, right?
They ran with it, and ultimately Jesus has to rebuke them.
Yeah.
For their passion, because they weren't managing it. They weren't seeing it through the lens of the mission.
Got it.
Right.
Really.
So really. It's and I think we're all prone to that. We live in Canada, we play hockey. You see guys whose passion sometimes causes them to do things on the ice that they would never do in real life, in public or in another scenario, right?
I've seen it. I may have lived it a couple times.
Yeah, you probably have. Probably both of us have. But this is no big surprise to anybody. But what is, it's incumbent upon us as leaders to start recognizing, are those passions leading us or are we leading them?
Yeah.
Right?
No, really.
Are we using them? And I can, we see Jesus as the perfect example of this. Nobody was more passionate about the kingdom of God than Jesus. And yet he made deliberate decisions to restrain himself, or to not restrain himself, but at certain moments in time when it was effective and it was purposeful.
Yeah.
And his passions led him to self-sacrifice, not to protect himself, not to justify himself. So this is the way we have to start thinking through these two areas of the giftedness that we have, that we're using it productively, not being led by it, but leading it, and recognizing that we're sinful beings who have moments in time when we lose our minds and we do things that we shouldn't do, say things we shouldn't say, act in ways we shouldn't act.
Right. So just to bring this together again, we're talking about self-awareness. We've talked about how significant it is for every leader, every person, but even more significant for leaders. If you're going to lead, you need to become more and more aware. We've made it clear that it's a lifelong pursuit. Really good. So I know you did along the way, you touched on this, but let's hit again. So where are these biases coming from? So we all have biases. We all have defective virtue. Like, where did that come from? Like, am I just born with that, or where does that come from?
Well, I think it comes from several different places. Again, from who we are, what God has wired us for. But it comes from our upbringing. Right. It comes from some of it comes from the home that we've been brought up in. Was it disciplined? Was it undisciplined? Was anger restrained in your home? Or was it just allowed to flare up and do whatever it wanted? Like, there's so many things. There are circumstances in life that happen that create fear in our lives when we feel as though we're approaching a circumstance. This happened before, and this is gonna be the outcome, and we have that fight or flight mechanism in us, where our brain sort of, the logic and the reasoning shuts down, and we just simply act out of instinct because of previous experiences. And so it's not the same for anyone. It's, it's like a bag of mixed nuts. Every handful is different. Every time you pull a handful out, it's not quite exactly the same. And
what is that bag of? Is it what is that bag of stuff?
Yeah, you remember that? That's a
Oh,
commercial
yeah.
that was on,
was it Twix? Is that
something where.
Oh man!
But you know what I mean, right? Every
Here we are.
person is a different collection
That's
of
funny.
experiences, giftings, home upbringing, even issues of relational issues where maybe there's been some hurt in particular relationship, marriage, or family, or whatever it happens to be, and it creates in us sometimes irrational fears
Yes.
that cause us to react in certain ways, and it's part of our who we are as as human beings, where our minds are wonderful. They keep track of all these things in a filing cabinet, and when something comes up that's similar, we pull that file out and we react out of previous becoming aware, and being able to say, no, I'm going to begin to I'm not allowing my filing cabinet to dictate my actions. I'm going to make decisions based on the reality of who I am in Christ and his purposes, and the fact that as a leader, I'm here to help nurture others, not just protect myself.
That's really good. That's really good. That helps us with that constant lifelong deal.
Yeah.
Because now we're letting the life of Christ and the character of Christ change our character, no matter what the past was, and our biases that we all have, right?
Yeah.
It's the character of Christ that changes that, right? So, that's really good. And you've already talked about this, Bruce. So we talked about where they're from, the biases from our past, our influences. But let's hit again, before we get to the application, why does it matter that we deal with this? Why can't I just leave me alone? I'm doing okay. Look what I've built. Everything is good around me. Why does it matter? Why do I have to do this?
Well, it matters because we use this expression all the time. The end does not justify the means in God's kingdom.
Right.
The
you should
goal.
Say that again. That's really good.
The end does not justify the means in God's kingdom. The pathway to get to the goal is as important as the goal. Yeah. The virtues and the attributes of the kingdom of God need to be expressed as you pursue the goal, because that's the goal itself, right?
Yeah. Well, because it's so good because during that pathway you're intersecting with people.
Yeah.
And if it's just and all of us have met leaders like that, right? To get to the goal. And if I'm honest, and I've shared this many times, so this won't surprise you or anyone, I'm kind of the let's get the job done, right? I'll give you an example, and I think you'll be so excited about this, and you may remember this. So we were doing Frosty Fest, and it was a pancake breakfast day, and so we had that line of, there was probably 6 of us cooking on those griddles. I don't even remember those. We had them set up. So I'm cooking and okay, I have an interesting combination of OCD and ADHD. So I keep changing what I'm obsessing about. So what I'm obsessing about that day was my pretty pancakes and how beautiful they are and how they're all symmetrical on my griddle. So I'm sitting there and I'm chatting with people on this side and this side, and I turn this way to have a conversation, and I look down and the girl on this side is touching my pancakes. And without thinking, I'm going, hey, like I just reacted. Like my brain is like, you're touching my pretty lines. It's like, so I had to apologize about my it was virtuous to want perfect pancakes.
Yeah.
But I did not respond well at the time.
end didn't justify the means, right?
Did not justify the means. So good news was,
I mean, those are funny, and we sometimes they're comical and we laugh them off, but in the reality of collaborative effort where there's a team and there's all kinds of things at stake, not just pancakes. How people respond and how we respond to them is so significant as a leader. I have to be as aware of the goal as or aware of people's needs and their potential for growth and development as I am for the goal that we're trying to achieve.
Right.
So it's so important. And the other aspect of this is our leadership bias tends, and our gifting tends to lead us to gravitate to people who are similar to us.
Right.
We don't intentionally engage with people who are different than us. It has to be a conscious decision. And so in building a team, it makes sense that we need people with different skills and abilities and who think differently and who process differently than we do, so that the collective impact is greater. The sum of the parts is greater than, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And so knowing what our strengths are, our biases are, and the things that we're passionate about allows us to identify others who fill in gaps and who complement our strengths with their strengths, rather than just simply getting people around us who feel the same, think the same, do the same, but it's incomplete, right?
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
so important.
why
Really
it's
good.
so important, not only
Well,
for peace and harmony and helpful and healthy relationships. It's necessary in terms of us being able to have a good team that's high functioning with multiple skills and abilities, where critical thinking can happen between the team members without offense and without them being crushed by someone who's sort of the dominant voice.
yeah, that's so important, because unless you can build that team with those different gifts, those different callings, those different abilities, you're not effective, like you just said. So this is really important. And so it starts there, and then it doesn't end, because now you've got these perspectives. They think these giftings think differently than you do. So it's really important to be aware of that. So really, really good. So we're about to turn the corner then, and you're going to tell us how to do this. We've talked about it. We know we have to be self-aware. We know we have biases, and you're going to give us an exercise that will make us all happy. Right?
Yeah. This is an exercise that I participated in, and I've recommended to a number of people, and they've come back to me to say how helpful it's been to them. It's not something that I created, but it's called the Reflected Best Self exercise.
Okay.
So it's finding out who you are in the positive rather than the negative.
Okay.
Right. So, and it's a very simple exercise, but it's very informative and very helpful. And I'll use my own example or my own testimony of this as an example. At a time when I was making some significant transitions in life and vocation and pursuits, I found it extremely helpful and revealing. And so essentially what you're doing is you're going to go to maybe 5 to 10 people, and ask them, and they come from different areas of your, maybe they're colleagues in your workplace or in your ministry, wherever you happen to be working. Could be friends, family members. Your wife is always good to include. We actually take a version of this. My wife and I use a version of this with couples to move them to a deeper understanding of why they appreciate each other or what they appreciate in each other.
Right.
But I'm digressing there. Let me come back to this. You simply go to people, you send them a letter, or you ask them by email to say, just when I'm at my best, when I'm functioning at my highest and being the most productive in our team or in our family or as a friend, what am I doing? What is it that I bring to the table that you can say, you're great at this. You're wired for this particular task or this particular, area. And so you're asking them to give you what you are, who you are when you're at your best. And what I found when I did this, I sent this just simple question out and got some really interesting responses from people. I think I sent out 15 and I got most of them back. And I began to see a thread through them all. People said, when you have this great ability to do this, You have this really strong, kind of gifting to be able to do this. For what it was for me, and I'll just share what it was. People began to identify that I had a good ability to bring people of differing opinions, differing points of view together, and help them kind of, merge their thinking and create a common goal and purpose. And that came up several times. You could put it under the category of being a peacemaker or, a strategist or whatever. But all of a sudden I began to see myself differently, not just simply as a guy who was a boss.
Yeah.
But I had this ability and to bring people with differing views together and help them grow and understand each other. And I thought, okay, well, if that's there, and that was the thread that ran through it, as I'm making transitions in life, vocation, whatever that happens to be, I want to slot myself into a role where that's going to be really important. And so what it did for me was I began to see that even though I had the ability, or maybe the technical ability, and maybe the the experience to be in a senior role like a CEO or the primary leader's role.
Yeah.
I actually fit better as you and I have had this conversation, as an integrator.
Right.
Someone who serves a vision and helps to bring people together to pursue something. And it's more like the second in command, the Daniel or the Joseph who served the king. And maybe that's maybe extreme, but that type of role of being kind of the the integrators, helping to formulate and take a vision and actually put some wheels on it and make it happen.
Really good.
Not just
on the way by there, let's mention that book, Bruce, Rocket Fuel. Talks about
great book.
The visionary and the integrator. Really good. If you're listening, that's a great book to really describe what Bruce is talking about here in terms of that function, which is incredible.
So simple exercise. Identify maybe 10 people in your life who know you well enough and are going to be honest with you, and ask them to just simply tell you, when you're at your best, what are you bringing to the table? What is it that you're uniquely wired for? And get that feedback, and then kind of process it in a way that you start to find commonalities in it. And it's really helpful, because once you start to see those threads, it allows you to make great decisions about how to build a team, who should be on your team. It strengthens your self-awareness, but it also it helps you identify your gaps and blind spots, things that you might think you're great at, but nobody else thinks you're great at.
Yeah.
And I'm just being honest, right? Like,
no, right.
None of us are the complete package.
100%. So just as we're wrapping up this piece, and we're going to wrap up the whole talk a little bit about what people can expect if they do that. So I'm going to make a list of 10 people. I'm going to send this out. When I'm my best self, what am I doing? Like, I feel like I need to prep myself for a little bit of security. It's like, I know we're talking, let's all be happy and it's going to be my best self, but how should people prepare themselves for this? Because we want them to go do this, right? So how do they prepare themselves, or do they need to?
Well, as I said, this is a reflective exercise in the positive, not the negative. You're not asking people to tell you what you're bad at.
Yeah.
That you have to deduce that from what they tell you you're good at. But it's, I think they need to receive the responses back in a very humble and reflective way.
Yeah, perfect.
Right? Because and what better virtues to bring to the table than deeply reflective and humble as a leader?
That's great.
Right? So you receive it back and you process it, and you can always go back to them and say, hey, help me understand that a little more, because these are not strangers, right? These are people who know you, maybe have worked with you for years, maybe that, if it's your wife or your family or your mom or your dad or whatever, you got to choose the 10. But it's good that they come from different areas of life, not just business, not just ministry, not just family.
Yeah.
and then
Really good.
process it in a way, and really pray over it. Say, God, help me really know who I am in you, so that I can be the best possible leader. So I'm more aware of my blind spots, more aware of the times when I let my emotions and my passions rule in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
So that I can actually allow those passions and emotions to be productive, not destructive.
Yeah.
And that's the sign of a healthy, mature leader, who reckon. And what better way to serve those who you're leading than to know yourself deeply enough that you conduct yourself in a way that causes them to grow and become everything they're intended to be.
Excellent. Excellent. Any last words you want to share with us as we're closing out, Bruce? Really good today.
Well, I want to maybe just emphasize how important this is. How fundamentally important it is to being a healthy leader and developing a healthy team. It would be a sad thing to spend 30 years of your life working in leadership and then at the end of that realize I could have been better.
Yeah.
If I'd just taken the time. Like how important is this to not just yourself and the people you interact with, but to the kingdom of God? It hopefully will lead us to be more transparent, slow to speak, slow to get angry, which, we don't have to go far to know where that comes from. These are the qualities that scriptures lead us to, but sometimes we're not intentional about really diving in and figuring it out.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Well, as leaders, we can be better, and we should want to be. So this idea of self-awareness is so important. It's not always something that we're good at, but I think, as you've said, we need to become very good at this. We need to allow people into our life to speak into our life because they want the best for us. That they have, we want to self-reflect, be self-aware, and allow others in our life. And a great exercise you've given us today. So really, really good, Bruce. I knew it would be. I knew it would be great today from our leadership guru. Thank you for that. And and thank you for listening today and interacting. We want this to be interactive. Send us your thoughts. Send us your ideas. Send this to somebody else even. You may, not as, hey, I had a podcast you need to hear, but maybe a general. I've heard of Kingdomize, and they got some stuff for you. But so you should subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify, however you do that. We have a mailing list, send us stuff a couple times a month. So stay connected with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's podcast or any of them. Let's stay connected, and we'll see you again next week on Kingdomize, the podcast.
Thanks for joining us today on Kingdomize, the podcast. Let's keep the discussion going throughout the week on our socials or on our website, kingdomizeglobal.com. Contact us today to see how we can walk together to see more of God's kingdom in your city as it is in heaven.